Hola, it's Jessica from Ogling.com with a fall tutorial. Burlap lace placemats. These are super popular this time of year, so I combined the lace with the Sharpie lettering, and I'm a huge fan of mixed textures and prints, so this was way fun for me and easy. You can personalize it with names, you can write sayings, anything you really want to do with this, so I love the flexibility of this project. Plus, it's pretty easy, so you can actually make however many you need for your party or event. The very first thing you need to do is even out your burlap. When you buy it from the store, they usually don't cut it straight, so you're going to have to do this to make sure that your measurements are accurate and consistent. So you're going to find the first strand that goes through the entire width of the burlap. Once you find that strand, that's going to be like your indicator strand. You're going to start pulling that off. It will get stuck, however, if there's like multiple strands underneath it. So if you pull it horizontally, it's going to gather the burlap, like making ruffles. And you can either break it off at that point once you have it all gathered or cut it off. And then when you straighten it out, you're going to have this gap. And once you see that gap, then you're going to cut along that line. So once you make that cut, it's going to be all even and straight and pretty. And then you're going to repeat that for the other side. Now that you have it all straight and pretty, you're going to measure out 20 inches wide. So at your 20-inch mark, I found like a line or a strand that I want to go by, and I just carefully cut along that strand. Use that as a guide, but if you need to create the gap, it's the same idea. Just get a strand, pull it all the way out, and it'll create a gap that you can cut along. But you see right here that I'm just using the line as my guide. Now you don't have to do this part, but I do want all my edges frayed, so I'm just cutting off the selvage because the selvage will not fray. Once you have the selvage cut, measure 14 inches in height and then do the same thing. Cut along a line. So you want to keep everything even, so you don't want to just start cutting. You want to just follow that grain all the way through carefully, so just take your time. Now you want to iron out your wrinkles. With your iron set at a medium heat and applying pressure, you do want to continuously move the iron so that it doesn't burn the burlap. If you need to use starch, you can go ahead and use starch to get those wrinkles out. Now to the machine. So I'm using corresponding thread for my bobbin and top thread. I did switch the needle so that it is a ballpoint needle, and I'm using an S foot. So the S foot's just a wider foot, and it allows me to have an even half-inch seam allowance, and I'm just using a double stitch. Some people call it a triple stitch. It just goes forward, back, forward on every stitch, so it locks in every stitch. Now with my needle in the down position, I'm going to end right before the edge, like about a half inch, and that's right at the edge of my toe, so I can just turn it easy. And I'm going to go all the way around. So you're going to do this for all four corners and making sure you lock it. So if you don't use a double stitch, just make sure that you're locking it at the corners and at the beginning and end of your stitch. Now the reason I'm doing this stitch is pretty much going to be a stop stitch. So I do want to fray the edges of my placemat, but I do not want it to continue to fray the entire placemat. So with it stitched all the way around, it's only going to fray until it reaches the thread that you put in it. Now you can see here the stitches that I put in. If you have your needle in the down position and make the turn a half inch before the edge, then this will allow you to pull the side strands so that you can fray all four sides. Next, we're just going to work with letters and a Sharpie pen. So I did find the center of my placemat by simply just putting a marker, which is a little pin. And then I lined up my A, and I counted about 5 strands up from the bottom. So I got these letters on clearance at, I don't know, Michael's, Joann's. They're really cheap paper ones. You can make your own or print one out, cut it out, however you want to. Write it yourself if you want to. But I did count 5 from the bottom to keep it all even, using the strands as my indicator line. And then just with the Sharpie, You're going to hold it in place with your fingers and then just trace around it. And you can spell out whatever you want. You can space them out however far you want. And it's really that easy. Tip: since burlap is loosely woven, the Sharpie will go through, so be sure to place a folded sheet of paper under the burlap to protect any surface you do not wish to mark. Now that I have them all traced out, I just went through and thickened up any lines that I thought were too thin. I put some shadowing in some of them, so you can really do whatever you want. Now, using corresponding colored thread for the burlap on the bobbin and corresponding embroidery thread for the lace on top, you're gonna sew down your lace. The reason I'm using embroidery thread for the lace is just because lace is so much more delicate and embroidery thread is thinner than all-purpose thread. And I'm using corresponding thread to the burlap on the bobbin just so that it's less noticeable if you happen to turn it over, but it really doesn't matter. So lining up your lace from your letters, I'm using again the strands as an indicator and counting up the line and following that down. I did pin it, however, to keep it in place. And then I'm working with the needle in the down position and I'm following the scalloping on the edge of the lace. And I do have beading on this lace, so you do have to be careful and mindful of that because you can break needles or it will push your foot in a different direction. You just have to be careful. Now, to pin the top part, push the lace flat, but don't pull it, and then pin it down. So I'm pinning it on every peak and valley. And the same thing, working with my needle in the down position and working slowly. I am following the scalloping and again stitching. I did, however, use a double stitch on this, going forward, backward, forward, but you don't have to if you don't want to. This is how the lace looks when you are done stitching it down. The very last step is just trimming the lace so that it is even with the burlap, and you're trimming the lace on both ends. You can make the placemats for the fall season or just for Thanksgiving. It can be very personal and fun according to your personality. Made mine with things that I love about the holidays: family, friends, eating, drinking, and always talking to God. So the sequins with the lace and the Sharpie lettering on the burlap is a great compliment to my dishes, and I know it will be for yours as well. I hope I inspired you, and happy Thanksgiving. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless, and I'll be back soon.